Want to create professional presentations in minutes using AI? In the next hour, you will discover how tools like ChatGPT and Gemini can help you brainstorm, research, and design faster in PowerPoint. To go beyond the basics and master AI-powered presentation design, check out our full course in the description. Let's begin!
Hello and welcome to the PowerPoint with AI course. I'm your instructor, Ahmed. I'm a psychology graduate and a graphic and web designer. Now, I've been working in the design field for a couple of years, but I've been particularly interested and passionate about creating beautiful and usable as well as inspiring presentations. Creating presentations and presenting them so seamlessly is an art form. And now with AI, we are able to do that much more efficiently. So if you're a person whose job requires them on a daily basis or a weekly basis to create presentations, analysis, reports, and so on with PowerPoint, then this is the course for you, because AI with PowerPoint is going to cut your workflow by more than half. So in this course, we'll be exploring a couple of different themes, beginning first with a brief introduction on what AI is, how it works, and how we can use it. And in the second chapter, we'll be learning about AI prompting and how we can use different AI models such as ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, and other tools that you may be familiar with, how we can use them to create great presentations. So from brainstorming and exploration to research and analysis to content generation, we're going to be learning it all from A to Z. In the third chapter, we're going to be learning how we can assemble it all. So we already have some content generated and we already have some research as foundation. So in the third chapter, we'll be learning how to bring it all together into one comprehensive and beautifully designed presentation. In the fourth chapter, we'll be learning about PowerPoint's built-in AI Copilot and how we can take advantage of it to create presentations right in the heart of PowerPoint without having to go outside. And of course, we have a chapter dedicated to real-life projects where we take realistic situations and we turn them into prompts and we go step by step into the content creation process. And I will show you and go with you step by step and show you how we can create a presentation from scratch. And the last chapter is on AI tools beyond PowerPoint. So far in the course, I've taught you how we can integrate and incorporate AI into the workflow of PowerPoint. But in this chapter, we'll be exploring tools that are completely outside of PowerPoint and how we can use them on their own. So you don't need to use multiple tools at a time, but only one. So we'll be exploring a little bit the different types that we have out there, and you can check them for yourself. All of this and more you will be getting through the course PowerPoint with AI. I'm very excited and I hope you are too. So get ready, buckle up, and let's get started. Hello and welcome to the very first lesson of PowerPoint with AI. In today's lesson, we're going to have a very quick introduction into artificial intelligence. We're going to talk about the definitions and explanations, what AI is, what AI tools do, and how they exactly work. We're going to have a brief overview of all these different topics. And later on, we're going to explore how we may integrate these AI tools into our PowerPoint workflow. So let's go ahead. Our table of contents for today, we have first, we're going to talk about what is AI, what is artificial intelligence. We're going to go ahead with a definition and try to understand what it's based on. So that's a little bit of theory in the beginning. And then we're going to have as a second topic, the fundament. So what is the basics? What is AI based on? How it works? Very simply explained. We're not engineers here, so we're not going to do a deep dive into the topic. And our third point will be the limitations, what to watch out for in terms of artificial intelligence. Now, of course, we need to understand what we can do with it and what we cannot in order to understand our limitations. So let's get started with the first point.
what is AI? Now, AI here, I have a very neat definition: the capability of a machine or computer system to perform tasks that traditionally require human intelligence, such as learning, problem solving, decision making, and reasoning. Now, this might be a neat definition, but let's throw it away for now and let's try to understand what that means. So it's basically like a person, right? It is not a person, it is a computer or a machine that attempts to imitate. It works similarly like how a person might work. It tries to think, it tries to solve some problems for you. And the way that it works is very conversational, so it's pretty intuitive for us as humans. It's not something that is related with code, it's not too complex, it's very, very easy to deal with. And it also learns just like we humans learn. Now, what are LLMs? LLMs are large language models. Perhaps you've heard of this term, you will probably come across it at some point, but it is basically the correct term for what everyone calls AI. And they are machine learning models that can comprehend and generate human language text. They work by analyzing massive data sets of language. Now, AI is a very, very big term, but LLMs are the very specific technology that we are working with. So they are machine learning models. They're basically mathematical programmed models that are able to learn. So you give them data, they learn from it, and they try to understand and generate human language text. So they work by analyzing data. So they're not coming up with something completely new or out of the ordinary, something from scratch. They are just working with what we give them. And that is very important in understanding how this works. So now we come to the fundament. Let's try to understand, how do LLMs, or how does AI in general work? Now, a very, very main idea here is data training. Now, as we said, they are machine learning models. So they learn from certain things. And just like a baby, you give a baby when a human, a fully built human is first a baby, right? They come out of the womb and they don't know anything, right? So it's like a blank canvas, and you have to approach them slowly. You have to first teach them, I'm not really sure, to be honest, this is not my area of expertise, but you basically, from having a baby to an infant to a child, you're accompanying them. You're trying to teach them things little by little. At first, they do not speak, right? They do not understand what you're talking. So first you speak with them, then they catch on to the language. They begin to form a couple of words on their own. And then you teach them math, and you teach them history and geography. And then they get into high school and then college, and so on and so forth. So it's a learning process. For us humans, it takes many, many years. But for these models, it doesn't take that long. You just have to feed it all the information and it can process it all at once. So, data training. AI models are trained on data sets. So that means a collection of data. Many are able to search the internet. They search, process, and synthesize information based on prompts, which we will be talking about now. But they basically can search the internet, they can process information in it, and they can join that information. They can summarize it, they can analyze it, they can categorize it in different ways that are helpful to us humans. And you can also upload data for it to process. So at some points in history, these models, they were limited. They didn't have access to the internet, and we didn't have access to them either. It was just specific scientists, specific computer engineers who were able to deal with these models. But now they're open to the public, and you can upload almost any type of data to feed it to them. And then they can try to learn from it and understand, and then do the analysis for you. Then we have our next point, which is very important. As we've mentioned, it is prompting. What is prompting? Now, prompting is a very specific art nowadays, right? It had somewhat of a different meaning before, but now it has a different meaning, and it is basically about AI models. So AI models are activated by what we call a user prompt. A prompt is essentially a request, a question, a command, right? Whatever you want to call it. It is something that starts the conversation. So you might be familiar with this. When a teacher gives you a prompt, they tell you to do an essay, to write an essay or do something. And this is quite similarly what you do here. You give it a task. You say, summarize Macbeth in 10 words. And that is just an example, but that's how it works, right? You feed it an idea, a task, and then it will do it for you. It could be a question. You could ask it, how is the process of applying to college applications in the US? Can you tell me a little bit more about that? So it can be very conversational, and that is how usually AI models work. And then there's the output. So based on your prompt and the data sets, it joins them together, tries to analyze what your task is, right? So it's not going to search the whole internet for all the information in the world. No, it's going to use your task. If you're asking about college applications, it's going to go ahead and search for that. So AI models can generate text, images, tables, and other types of content. And that is all based on your prompt and your data sets. Now, some models are limited and others can provide more information or in different formats, so you have to pay attention to that. Now, coming to the last point, which is limitations. What to watch out for. So, here are a few limitations that I've outlined. Of course, there are a lot more, and it depends on what type of task you're really working with. But one thing is quality is limited. Many people have pointed this out, but working with many different AI models, they are a work in progress. So oftentimes, when you ask them for a specific task, and for our purposes, it would be text, it would be PowerPoints, presentations, or content for PowerPoint, and perhaps images. And usually you will notice the quality is not that great, but that is not always the case. It depends on how well your prompts are, right? So if you are not a great prompter, you are not very well experienced, then you might be able to generate photos, but the photos are very clearly AI generated. People can tell that. So we will learn how to try to avoid that, how to maximize the quality. Another point is that AI can hallucinate. Sometimes it gives out fake information that doesn't exist in the world. Now, this point has been minimized. This problem has been dealt with by many of the AI models, so that shouldn't be much of a problem in the near future. Third point is it cannot generate original ideas. Now, you should know this from now. AI can come up with interesting information that it finds on the internet. It can see certain patterns. It's very good at pattern detecting or categorizing things, but it doesn't come up with original ideas. Nothing from scratch. It can mix certain ideas in a way that makes them seem original, but it is always doing remixes of what is already there. And the last point that we have is the logic is not foolproof. So sometimes when you might ask an AI model for something, it might say something that does not make sense. And I think this is something we deal with when we're dealing with humans as well. So it is quite normal. But you should just pay attention. Do not fully rely on AI models, okay? You should always consult yourself first and make sure that you don't put something out that you have not proofread. And that is about it for the limitations. In the next lessons, we will be talking about the different types of AI models and how to write good prompts. The art of prompting, after all, is one of the most crucial skills when it comes to dealing with AI. Welcome to the second lesson in the PowerPoint with AI course. Today we'll be learning about the different AI models. Now this is going to be a very brief introduction into the different types of AI models that we have, and of course we won't be able to cover all of them because there are simply too many at this point. We're going to talk about a few of the main big commonly used AI models, and we're going to talk about the different usages very quickly, but we will be exploring some of these later on in the series as we are teaching about prompting, as we are teaching about integrations with PowerPoint and how we can improve our workflow. Let's get started. So here are 6 different models that we'll talk about. You already see the logos and you might be familiar with them. Now, the first one that we have is ChatGPT. This is by far one of the most known, most successful AI models, and some might argue that it's one of the best. I would say personally, by my experience, that it has been the most user-friendly and it does provide more tailored, optimized content for me, for my purposes. But I do think that if we're talking about what is the best, what has the best output, ChatGPT may not be the best, but it is simply the most convenient, I would say. So next on, we have Gemini by Google. This is also a pretty good one. It also has very, very good use cases. But what I love the most about it is that if you have an Android, you can just say, hey, Google, and then it will pop up and talk to you. I think I just activated my phones, but basically it is also very convenient, very easily accessible. You don't need to open an app and talk to it. But for our purposes, of course, you should probably be doing this on your computer so you can get better results and you can focus on your prompting. And then next we have Copilot. If you have Microsoft 365 subscription, you probably have this in the package. And it is also integrated within Edge as a browser. It is integrated within PowerPoint, within other programs in the Office suite. So it is very convenient as well. It really boils down to which of these services you are using. So if most of your gadgets are using Google services, then of course it is easily usable with that. And ChatGPT is right now, I think, integrated with Apple. So that's also more convenient for Apple users. And here we have Microsoft. So if you're using Windows, you're using Microsoft Office. So that's also easier for you. Then we have Midjourney. Now, all of the other AI models that I talked about, ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, they deal with a lot of different types of content, but they are mostly text-based. They can actually generate images, but a lot of people use them for other reasons. Now we have Midjourney, which is focused on images rather than text. So here we see a specialization. And there are, of course, other AI models that do this, but Midjourney is one of the most known ones. And we have then Grok. This is from X, or previously known as Twitter. Now Grok is also very good. There are, of course, different use cases, right? So some people might say Grok is better for programming, ChatGPT is better for writing, Gemini is better for this and that. Personally, I'm not very familiar with the different strengths because I'm not a programmer myself, but we will be discussing how they work differently from each other and how we may benefit from them. And then we have DeepSeek. DeepSeek, of course, was the Chinese competitor of ChatGPT. You probably might have heard of it in the news. It was a very big news when it came out of nowhere, and there were accusations that they basically took some content, basically copyrighted code from ChatGPT. We don't know what the real case is, but it also is not of our interest right now. What interests us is what works. So these are a couple of the most known services. There are a lot more that I did not mention, and if I need to mention everything, this will be a 2-hour lesson. But one important thing to know is a lot of these models are very optimal, very competent, and we are at a point in technology that all of these offer similarly competitive edges, right? So each one has a competitive edge. Some of them have specialization, but a lot of them provide a relatively similar level of quality, right? And every new day, there's an update, there's a new model. So whatever I say about these models may not be true in a couple of months. If I say ChatGPT is better than Gemini, that might not be true in a couple of months. So just keep that in mind. And one thing to also know is that there are a lot of other services that are AI models, but they are not independent, and they are actually built on ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, or other services. So they present themselves as completely different artificial intelligence models, but they are in fact only ChatGPT wrappers, right? So not to be fooled by them, they just are built in a way that is advertises them as something very specialized, but they might not be. And that's it for today's lesson. We will be exploring some of these in more detail in the next couple of lessons, so make sure to tune in. And in the next lesson, we'll be talking in detail about the art of prompting. In this lesson, we will be talking a little bit more about the art of prompting. Now, just to do a brief overview of what we talked about, prompting. What is prompting? Now, AI models are activated by what we call a user prompt. It is a request, a question, a command. You can imagine this as an old man who is just sitting in a chair silently for days, months, years, waiting for someone to wake them up and ask them a question. And that is when they will give their wisdom. That is when they will try to answer this question to the best of their abilities. And this is what AI really is like. So, as an example, you can ask it to summarize Macbeth in 10 words. And only when you ask this question will it answer you. So that is important to know. AI is not going to do some work for you and send it to you next morning. It's not going to make reminders for you. It is only going to answer you once spoken to, right? So that is a misconception that a lot of people have, but it's important to know. And, it's very conversational. So you send it a message, it sends you a message back. But it's not going to send you two messages. It's not going to double text you. So only when you ask it something again, you can ask it for an adjustment, you can ask it for a further question, only then will it answer you back. Now, we will be talking a little bit more about prompting throughout the course, but I would like to give a couple of important tips that could help you. And before we get into these tips, we have to understand that AI relies on two main things from the users. One of them is the prompts. You basically start the conversation by writing a question or a request, as we said, but the longer and more specific these prompts are, the better the results that you get, okay? And the second thing that it feeds on is the data. Now, it already has huge data sets. Most AI models have access to the internet. So, yeah, the internet has a lot of things, but it doesn't have the things that are relevant to you the most. So let's say you have a thesis that you have written and you would like to summarize it or analyze it or improve it in some way. It is not on the internet and it is not in the data set of the AI. So that is when you may add your file, either as text or as a document. Feed it to the AI so that it may process and analyze it for you and to answer your prompt, whatever it may be. So that is an opportunity. You can add text, images, documents, different data sets to AI, feed it to it so that it may give back to you an analysis of that. So these are the two main ways that you can interact with AI. Here are the 3 tips that I think make your prompting ideal and give you the most optimal results. The first thing is to be descriptive, right? So don't be stingy with your words. Don't just write single sentences that are simple. Write me an essay. No, try to be specific. So here's the example. Generate an image with a blue sky, an orange sunset. There is a dog with a specific breed. Perhaps it's a bulldog. It is jumping. Its tongue is out. There is a ship in the background. Basically, try to put some creativity into it. Now, of course, if you don't do that, the AI is going to insert some things on its own. It's not going to, leave it a complete empty canvas. But I think as humans, we tend to be more creative than AI. So it's always nice to put that vision that you have in your head because you have some expectation ultimately. You have an expectation of what image you want. So you can just describe that as much as possible, right? And that brings us to the second point. So whether you're doing a description of what you want or you're doing a prompt, you're asking a question, whatever it may be, try to be as specific as possible. When you want it to write you an essay, specify what output you need. What kind of essay is it? I want it to be a 350 to a 400 word college level essay. What about Kantian ethics? See, so we're kind of answering questions. If this were a human, this human would ask us, wait, you want me to write an essay? What is it about? It's about Kantian ethics. How many words? When is the deadline? Now, of course, AI doesn't need a deadline. It's going to try to give it to you as soon as possible, within a few seconds or minutes. But there are important factors that you can specify. And that is also related to the third point, which is being contextual. So basically, try to provide as much context as you can. Again, don't be stingy with the information. So here, as an example, we have write in my style as a 26-year-old Greek graphic designer with so-and-so. So basically, don't just give the information that you need. Hey, write me an essay. do this right now. This is, it's not a slave. It's also not a human, but you have to also give it some information about who you are, where you're coming from, and what you're doing. So it would be useful, for example, to say, I'm writing an essay for my college. I'm doing bachelor's. So then it can understand, okay, I'm doing a bachelor level essay, not a master's level essay. That makes things different now. Perhaps you are Greek, so you're not a fluent English speaker. So that means I have to adjust my writing style to your English level. So there are many factors that this AI can take into account, but only when you give it enough context. And the issue is, a lot of the times this AI is not going to ask you for this context, right? If this were human, they would have a million questions before they accomplish this task. But AI doesn't do that. AI just gets to work. And that is sometimes very positive, the fact that it can work with very little input. But we have to give it that input when we have specific expectations of what we want. And that is pretty much it for now. As I said, we will be learning more about prompting in the next lessons as we will take our knowledge to practice. But just keep these 3 tips in mind: be descriptive, be specific, and be contextual. In this chapter, we will be talking about AI prompting and content creation. In the first lesson, we're going to explore the process of brainstorming and idea exploration using artificial intelligence. And as an example, we will be using Gemini, which is a service provided by Google. So this AI model is sometimes unique in some parts, but at the end of the day, I could say that many of these AI models work in very similar ways. So we're going to come across very similar UI, so the user interface. What we're dealing here with, we have here our chats, we have here a box where we can input, and we have certain buttons. We're going to see similarities among the AI models, so it might not seem that different, but I would like to make you go through every single different model just to get a glimpse of the small little differences between them. Without further ado, let's get started. So let me just give you a very brief introduction into the interface that we are in front of. So of course, you might have to log in before you can get started with the service. I'm not sure, but you can go ahead and go to gemini.google.com to get started with it. So you're probably going to see a screen very much like this, where it says, hello, your first name. For me, it's Ahmad. And then you will see a text box. Now, they try to make this as simple as possible so you can jump right into action. If you're just curious, you want to do something quick and convenient, you can immediately ask Gemini. However, you also have other opportunities. Now, we do have the microphone option if we're feeling a little bit lazy and we would like just for it to dictate what we're saying, just to get a faster response. That could also work. But for our purposes, we'd like to deliberate a little bit more, to basically think about what we want to do and how we want to do it, right? So the plus button here allows us to upload files if we'd like, either directly from Google Drive or directly from our PC. We also have this tools option, which I find very, very neat, and we will see this on other AI models. This basically allows you to narrow down the output that you're looking for. So one option we have is deep research. Deep research features allows us to really do a deep dive and allow the AI model to do some deep thinking instead of trying to give us a very quick and direct response. We can create images, we can make canvas. Now this relates to more creative works, you could say, but this is not going to be our purpose for this lesson. Or you can do guided learning, which is more like very conversational, very guided conversation where you're talking to the AI model and it's bringing you to the points that you'd like to learn about by asking questions, by doing some exercises and whatnot. But for our purposes, we're going to go ahead and not choose any of these for now. And before we get started by writing, we need to do a little bit of the thinking ourselves, right? So let's take an example. Let's say we are basically doing a college level presentation on the technological advancements in medicine, but which ones? Ones that are particularly remarkable and that allowed humans to live longer, right? So this is a very interesting topic. It's a little bit narrowed down, not too general. So let's try to describe this. But before we go ahead, we don't really have a big idea of what we're going to be talking about. So the structure of our presentation, which topics we're going to touch upon, and how we're going to categorize these different topics, right? So we could do this in many different ways, but let's start ahead now with brainstorming. So I'm going to lay out a very simple prompt, but before I do that, let me give some context. So I am a college student and I would like to make a presentation about recent technological advancements in the field of medicine, particularly ones that have enabled us humans to live longer, right? So this is very simple. I'm not complicating things, just giving the AI a little bit of context to work with. So you can either send this and have the AI respond to you, but I find that sometimes a little bit unnecessary because you're going to have to wait a little bit and it doesn't know what you want of it just yet. So it might give you some ideas, but it doesn't have the full picture. So now that we've given some context, let's start writing about what we want, right? So I would like to brainstorm some ideas of what I could present about. Tell me very generally, briefly, right? We have to specify. So we want to be general a little bit in the beginning and brief. We don't want the AI to go on and do a deep research, do something very long. So tell me very generally and briefly about the different types of technological advancements in medicine. We could go a step further. We could ask it to structure these ideas, to categorize them, but I would like to leave that a little bit for later. So now we're exploring things. So let's see what it's going to give us. So here we get an answer. Let's see how long this is. It's brief, so it's good. So there are many exciting and recent blah, blah, blah. A lot of the times AI can really sprinkle in some filler words. So you can go ahead and kind of ignore this and get to the meat of the sandwich. So here we have genomics and genetic engineering, a little bit of an explanation. These technologies focus on understanding and manipulating our DNA. Examples include blah, 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 which allows for rapid analysis of person's entire genetic code. These advancements are paving the way for personalized medicine, treating diseases at their root cause. Okay. AI and machine learning integrated into nearly every aspect of healthcare. Okay. Regenerative medicine, robotics and surgical advancements, wearable technology and remote monitoring, telemedicine. Okay. So we have now something to run off, right? We have a basis. This is, of course, still very general and very brief. We have here an option, have Gemini create a detailed research report on this topic. Now, this could be very useful for the next step, which we will explore in the next lesson, which is doing deep research. We can go ahead and just start it, just to try it out right now, see what it's going to come up with. I believe that it's going to give us a research plan in the beginning. That's what Gemini usually does. So before it goes ahead and does the research, it's going to give us a plan. So here we see, here's my plan to tackle that topic. Let me know if you need to make changes. So as you can see, it's first going to research some websites, analyze results, create report, and that will be ready in a few minutes. So the main resource that we have is the internet, right? So it's going to research different websites. Of course, we can define the criteria of which websites that it will search or which it won't. So we find the general overview. So it's going to seek overviews, categorizing them, and so on. Explore specific breakthroughs, investigate advancements in surgical procedures and robotics. So we can go ahead and ask it to edit the research plan. Perhaps something is not working for us and we can see what it's going to do. So we can just go ahead and read the main words. So it's going to explore specific breakthroughs. It's going to investigate advancements, examine developments, analyze the impact of public health technologies like vaccine developments. Now it's going a little bit further than we want because if you're focused with me here, we still haven't decided the exact scope of our presentation. We just set out a very, very general plan. But here it's already synthesizing information, identifying technologies, and critiquing them from ethical, social, and economic grounds. So this is something that we do not want. So let's remove the deep research for a little bit. So I'm going to write it to tell it basically, let's not go with that plan. And then just be direct. What are we doing? I would like to stick to brainstorming right now and would rather narrow the scope of my presentation. But for that, I need to have a broad overview of the advancements. And yeah, so let's try it in a different way, right? We got a very general overview here. And then we would like to understand, okay, these are the general categories. Could you tell me a little bit more? But please, and please is a very essential word here. But please try to focus on one, we're going to identify some criteria. Legitimate and valid research, right? So we don't want anything that is very theoretical. Of course, research can be theoretical, but I mean, we don't want something that's just talk, right? So, filler words. Yeah, there's a lot of technology advancements in medicine and so on, but we don't want just talk. We want actual proof. We want only the research that has been done, validated, and properly applied. And maybe you can add that as well. So taken into practice and not just theory/research. And then we can also give a third criteria. What could the third criteria be? We could just leave it at that, to be honest. Or we could say 3 sounds interesting, or yeah, sounds interesting and engaging. So this is going to limit our research, of course, but it's all up to that. So let's see what's going to happen here. So a more focused overview for your presentation, highlighting key areas that are not just theoretical, but are also being actively implemented and are genuinely captivating. Okay, so the rise of personalized medicine through genomics and AI. This is a fantastic topic. What it is. So now it's explaining a little bit more about this topic. It's giving us a more broad overview with some specifics here and there. So it's explaining a little bit about it. In practice, no longer just research in oncology, genetic testing, blah, blah, blah. So it is actually, it is satisfying. I believe this is our second criteria, and this is our third. Why it's engaging. You can tell a powerful story of this. The microscopic revolution, regenerative medicine and gene editing, right? And it's going further. Same style, which is really good. So healthcare beyond the hospital, wearable technology, and remote monitoring. So now we have a few ideas in mind. But we could go a little step further, right? So now we brainstormed, we understood what can we talk about in this general industry, in this field, or in the scope that we outlined ourselves. But we could say, you know what, let's see what our competition is doing. Now, of course, other students in college are not particularly our competition, but we could just say, I would like to learn about what people are generally talking about and doing presentations about in terms of this subject. Please list for me, now we're being specific, right? List for me 10 different or distinct topics that are talked about most commonly within the last 5 years, especially among college level students and not advanced, perhaps and not professors, or perhaps professors is okay, but not researchers. So now we're trying to get something more our level, right? Of course, anything that we talk about as college students, I say we even though I've already graduated, but I'm saying anything that college students might talk about has been discussed or discovered or explored by researchers. So this isn't the best prompt, but we can see here it went ahead and is doing a research plan. So we can tell it to go ahead with this research, but I hope it doesn't take too long. So we can see, I believe, slowly we can see it, how it's progressing. So you can kind of be in on the process, right? So initial assumption, since the subject of your query is not specified and there is no prior conversation to draw on, We'll be focusing on generative AI. So as you can see here, it is somewhat complaining that we haven't been specific enough. So there is never such a thing as too specific, but it chose generative AI, and I find that to be a very suitable topic because it has been trendy lately. People have been talking about it a lot. So we can see here, it's doing the research strategy, next steps. It's already chosen the websites that it will research, and as you can see, Reddit is among them. There are a couple of websites from hospitals, research centers. I can see universities as well. And then it's synthesizing initial findings, identifying themes, drilling down for nuanced topics, researching more websites, I believe, and it's concluding the research. Now, just to remind you, we are still in the research phase. We're exploring what we can do. We're trying to understand, okay, what are the most common topics? What could we talk about, right, in terms of this presentation? Because at the end of the day, if you get 100 different people and you tell them to talk about one very, very specific topic, they are going to do 100 different presentations. And that is because each person is going to try to tackle the topic from a different perspective, right? Because one person finds generative AI fascinating, another person finds it scary, right? One person is in between these two feelings, so they feel this and that, and they're on the fence. So each person has a very unique perspective from where they're looking at. So the person who is scared is, of course, not going to show you the same information. They're not going to frame it in the same sense. So at the end of the day, that's what I'm trying to say is that you are going to present it from a unique perspective. So that's why when we're brainstorming here, we're not going to get to an objective truth. No, we are trying to figure out our style, our direction, right? So we can tell the AI to research this, but we have to see from what angle are we tackling this, okay? So now coming here, we can see it's almost done with the research. I think it's done right now. So it's giving us a full research, summary, as you can see here. So has marked a profound shift in the educational and professional landscape, primarily driven by the ubiquitous emergence of generative artificial intelligence. So we can just skim it and go ahead. So this is what we really wanted, right? And for example, if I think had I told this prompt to ChatGPT, it would have been a little bit faster because it wouldn't have done this deep of a research, I think. It would have understood that what I want is not too much of a deep dive, but rather surface level. So let's see the most common topics: AI for creative production in digital media, AI in healthcare and biomedical innovation, AI for personalized learning and assistive technology. And you can see there's a lot of AI here. And then there's academic integrity, misinformation, deepfakes, algorithmic bias. A lot of it is related to technology, but I think here it took the most common topics in student generative AI discourse, right? So just this topic is what it's talking about. It's not talking about history. It's not talking about geography. No, it's talking about generative AI. So we can see, okay, what have people focused on? There's a lot of, at the top, creative production and digital media, healthcare, biomedical innovation. So now we have an understanding, okay, what are people talking about? How could we frame it? Yeah, so having this information, we could technically get started with the next level. Now we just have to decide, make a decision. And one thing, unfortunately, that AI can't do for you is make decisions for you, right? So here is at a time where you as a human are very essential to the process. So go ahead, think about what you'd like to do, and choose the topic that interests you the most. You have a couple of facts here. We've brainstormed a little bit here and there. So you can see here, this is our prompt. This could have been longer. This could have been better. This could have been more specific. And because, as we said, the more specific information you give, the better results that you get. And one thing to note is that Gemini, when you toggle on or toggle off the deep research, I think you create a new conversation. So this is something that happened. If you can remember, we were talking about medical technology advancements. So it was right here. And then once we did the deep research feature, it kind of took us out. And this is why it didn't have enough context from our conversation. And this is something to keep in mind. This is one of the differences that happen that are between different AI models. So this might not happen with ChatGPT as an example, or Copilot, and that is something we're going to see in the next lessons. So in this lesson, we learned a little bit about how to shape some prompts, how to process the results that we're receiving from the AI, and how to make up our minds in terms of brainstorming and exploration. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next lesson where we'll talk more precisely about the process of deep research. So in this lesson, we will be talking about deep research. We've already explored using Gemini. We explored how we can do idea exploration and brainstorming in general, just a very broad overview. Now, today, we are at ChatGPT. So it's just chatgpt.com. You're probably familiar with this website. So here I'm using someone else's account, but it's pretty much the same UI, if you noticed. It's very similar, very clean. You would just have a box here. You can click here to add photos. It's just that the placement of the buttons is different. You can do deep research. These are limited. You can create images, study and learn, or a little bit more, right? So sometimes they even have the same names, the same labels. Other times they don't. Or you can do the voice mode, which I find really neat because it really feels like you're talking to someone. And also they implemented it very, very well. If you haven't tried it, go ahead and try it. It's basically like talking to a real person. So for our purposes, we're going to continue with the same topic. So if you haven't seen the lesson before, or if you've forgotten, we were basically talking a little bit about the developments, the technological developments in the field of medicine. And one of these was about generative AI and how AI has been involved in medicine. So we did a little bit of a research there, but it wasn't that deep. It was just surface level. And now we would like to employ ChatGPT to tell us a little bit more about it. Now, normally, if you are working to make a presentation, you probably shouldn't jump too much between AI models, because if you have one conversation, you can explain everything you need once and go ahead, with some sort of logical order. But now, because of all this jumping between different AI models, we are required to give some context. So we're going to first start and just tell them what we're doing. So we're telling to ChatGPT, I'm a college student and I'm preparing a presentation on the technological advancements in the field of medicine that have enabled. Now, originally we said that it enabled people to live longer. It doesn't necessarily need to continue being that, but we can just say, just for the sake of the example, and I have chosen to narrow it down to AI, basically AI technologies. So I would like to conduct a deep research. So we can either say that, or you can also just choose it from here. That is also just good to make sure that it's inputted and that it understands that's what we want to do. So I'd like to conduct a deep research to understand the available applications of AI in medicine, the effects, perhaps, you could say the effects and consequences, as well as the dangers and limitations. We could just throw in here the potential dangers and limitations. Yeah, so let's see what it comes up with. So we could go even further and be more specific, but we're narrowing it down little by little. So that sounds like a great topic. What is the scope or time frame you're interested in? So sometimes AI models ask you back things before they do a research, which I find really, really good. It's really smart because this is how a human would react. They wouldn't go ahead and say, yes, boss, I'm going to get to it. They're going to say, okay, I need a few details so I can do my research. So here we see what is the scope or time frame you're interested in. So we could talk about time frame. We could say the last 5 years. And are there specific domains of medicine you're particularly interested in? To know, but limit it to human medicine, or human to humans, or to medicine that helps or enables longer lifespan for humans, not necessarily animals for the sake of this example. So what level of technical depth do you want? Here is where we can specify the output. This is very important. So Do we want a research paper? Is this what we want? Not really. We want to put this in a presentation. But for the sake of our reading or our understanding, we could do that. But we can always go back and tell it, hey, this doesn't work. Can you rephrase this, right? So this is something that we can always do. So let's go ahead and continue reading this. So should the research be accessible to a general college audience or include more advanced scientific or technical content? So let's do a balance. The target audience is college students, so it should be understandable to them, but also do include some teasers of scientific information, advanced scientific information. All right, and then we see here, do you need examples of specific AI tools? Yes, please, why not? 5, what's the expected format or length of your presentation? Would you like visuals, statistics, or tables included in the research output? So as you can see here, what ChatGPT is trying to do is it's going to go ahead and do the research, but it's going a step further and saying, hey, I'm going to go ahead and do the visuals, the statistics, whatever you need. So for the sake of this experiment, let's say yes, let's do that. Or let's say the expected format, a PowerPoint presentation that will be 30 minutes long max, let's say. I will include a few visuals, stats, but no tables. And let's say you don't need to worry about the design, just the content. And yeah, let's just throw that in and see what comes out. So as I mentioned before, there are always new updates to this technology. So there's always new processes, and this could look very different now. It could look very different a week from now, right? Because they keep changing how it works. So for example, this box, it's the first time I've seen it. Before that, it looked a little bit different. But nevertheless, that's not important. What it is important is that it accomplishes what it sets out to do, right? For now, we can let it do its thing and do our own thing until it's done, because it can take some time. So it's done. It took a little bit of a while, I would say. As you can see here, it says 6 minutes. It went over 18 sources, and it did 85 searches. So let's go ahead and see what it has got for us. AI in medicine, advances towards a longer lifespan. Introduction. Okay, AI in preventive and predictive healthcare. As you can see, what's really neat is that it provides the source for each claim that it has, right? And what's nice is it also highlights certain points, right? Puts them in bold so that it's easier to see, since it's something that could be important for you. And it really is eye-catching. AI in diagnostics and medical imaging, AI in treatment and precision medicine. So it has given us a good overview in different parts, right? Now, it is really important to read through this. For the purposes of the lesson, I won't be doing that because that would take too long, but it would really be important for you yourself, as you're creating any type of presentation, to go through this research. Because while you will see later on in our lessons that I do tend to recommend to keep the PowerPoint presentations quite minimal. So you will not be reading off the slides. And if you are not reading off the slides, you will not have a resource. So it's quite important for you to prepare very well to understand the subject matter that you are presenting. So when you go ahead, read this to understand the subject matter, what you're actually presenting about, then you can present it more easily. And your presentation will only have bullet points. It will only have main points that only serve as a reminder for you. So looking at this, you could be satisfied with it and you could go ahead. Or you could tell yourself, no, this is not it. But what we would like to do is to further improve this and tailor it to our needs. So supposing that you have gone ahead, read it all, or at least read the introduction, conclusion, skimmed the rest. What we're going to do now is we're going to do a little bit of playing with the content. So this is kind of like summarizing, organizing. This is something we're going to do a little bit more in the next lessons. But for now, what we could do is do a very simple prompt, very minimalistic. And this is not going to take a long time. So we're going to say, please summarize the research results into 10% of the length and simplify them. So in case that this is a little bit too hard for you to understand, a little bit too difficult, you can do this just to skim through it, right? So now you have it much more neatly organized for you, right? So you have the introduction, you have the prevention and prediction, diagnostics and imaging. Now, as you can see, they're using terms that are more easily understandable, treatment and precision medicine, and it's putting bullet points. So AI personalizes therapy. For example, choosing best cancer drug for a patient's genes. It improves chronic disease management, diabetes, heart disease, and so on. AI assistants help doctors make faster, more informed decisions. So we have all of these points. And that is pretty much it. This is how you conduct some deep research. Now, I would personally recommend that you go through these processes again and again. So it is not often the case that you come upon exactly what you need. Sometimes you ask it, it comes up with the results that you're not quite satisfied with. So you can go ahead and ask for another prompt or ask for a different research, or maybe you want it to frame things in a different way. In the next lessons, we will be talking a little bit more about how to handle this information that we have, how to tailor it so that it could fit into a good presentation, and then how to actually put it and fit it into the presentation.
Congratulations on completing this free PowerPoint with AI tutorial. You have learned how to integrate AI into your workflow, turning complex ideas into clear, engaging presentations in a fraction of the time. If you would like to go deeper, the link in the description takes you to our complete PowerPoint with AI course. Inside, you will learn how to write scripts with ChatGPT, enhance slides with Gemini and Copilot, and design cohesive decks with smart AI workflows. By the end of this course, you'll be able to craft polished, persuasive presentations that stand out, whether they're for clients, teams, or for your own business. Thanks for watching.